It being 6:30, I'll call to order the meeting of the Oregon School District Board of Education on Monday, December 11th, 2017. We're in the Oregon High School Innovation Center. Ms. Wick, would you call the roll?
Ms. Feeney? Present. Ms. Oderico? Ms. Flanagan? Present. Mr. Raymond? Here. Mr. Kraus?
Yep.
Mr. LeBrun? Mr. Zock?
Present, and Mr. LeBrun had notified me that he was going to be out of state today. I anticipate Courtney will be here, and guess she's running late. I have proof that the meeting has been appropriately noticed under Wisconsin Open Meetings Law, and excuse me, proofs of that notice will be with Ms. Wick if anyone wants to inspect those.
Okay.
The agenda tonight is we have action item, it's to receive our audit report, and then we have several informational items, including a mental health update and the presentation on senior class seminar. I need to motion to approve the agenda as posted. Mr. Raymond with the motion, Ms. Feeney with the second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed, motion carries. We have an agenda for tonight's meeting. That takes us to agenda item A, consent calendar. Is there any item on the consent calendar that any board member wishes to be removed for discussion? Mr. Kraus.
Steve, I'd just like to note that when we vote on this, I'm going to abstain for the minutes of the previous meeting.
Thanks, Dan. And per our practice, you can vote in general, and we'll note that you're abstaining specifically with respect to the minutes. Anybody else? Yep, Barb, same here? Okay. So you have that, Janie. They're abstaining from the vote on the minutes. Anything else? I'll need a motion to approve the consent calendar then. So Ms. Flanagan with the motion, Mr. Kraus with the second. I'll note that we have a number of donations tonight. We have a $2,000 donation from Edwin Ferguson to the OMS band to support their program, and that's in $2,000, and there's anticipated to be continuing donations for a much larger amount, so we appreciate that. We've got a donation from the Madison Community Foundation from a component fund of that, the Wisconsin Youth Services Fund, and slightly over $1,000 to Brooklyn Elementary to for the purposes of basic needs for students, including coats, boots, hats, eyeglasses, bus fare, etc. So that's a generous donation from the Community Foundation. Oregon Youth Basketball has donated $5,500 for a scoreboard at RCI, and the Athletic Boosters have added a second donation of $10,000 to match a prior $10,000 donation for our J.C. Park project. So thank you to those folks for your donations, and we greatly appreciate that. Ms. Wick, would you call the roll?
Ms. Flanagan? Yes. Mr. Kraus?
Yes.
Mr. Raymond?
Yes.
Ms. Oderico? Yes. Ms. Feeney? Yes. Mr. Zock?
Yes, so consent calendar items passed by unanimous vote. Moving on to agenda item B, communications from the public. Is Ms. Wick, is any member of the public registered for speaking this evening?
No.
Okay, board policy 18004 allows the public to address the board. Is there any member from the public that wishes to address the board this evening? Seeing none, we'll move on to agenda item C, that's the OEA report. Is there any member from the OEA? And I don't see anybody. So we'll move on to Carolyn. How are you doing?
How are you?
You good? Anything special to report on, or are you just continuing on working?
Yeah, 2 weeks off till break.
Okay. How is things going here? With it? Yeah. Okay. And the new commons area?
Yeah, it's super nice.
Okay.
Yeah, everyone's enjoying it. I go there every day for study hall. It's nice with all the windows.
Okay. We're just gonna have to tell Mr. Weiland to hurry up with that fireplace so we can get in there and bask in that. Okay. So, all right. Thank you, and I hope you continue to be working on the school start time stuff that we talked about and providing feedback as we move forward. That takes us to action items. Number D is the audit report, and this, I believe, is Andy's. And each of you should have at your desk a bound copy of our audit report, something we do on an annual basis. Andy engages our auditor, which is Johnson and Block, to audit our books. And so, Andy, the floor is yours.
Thank you. I'm pleased to present tonight that we do have what's called an unmodified audit report. Basically, it used to be called unqualified, now it's called unmodified. Essentially means that it's a clean audit. There's no issues that the auditors found. In fact, they actually didn't have any findings this year. Everything was great. No federal findings on any of the programs. Everything was excellent, and no real highlights in the management letter as well. So tonight I'm just going to kind of go through, again, kind of at the 50,000 foot level, keep this very simple for you, talk a little bit about fund balances, those types of things, and then I'll entertain any questions that you have. So here is our summarized income statement. This is basically our general education and our special education funds. Those are our main two funds that we operate out of on a yearly basis. You'll see that we're comparing budget to actual here. Our budget was about $600,000 more than our actual revenues. We didn't bring that much in. A good part of that was related to not selling the school construction house, and you're going to see a theme of things related to that because it's a $400,000 revenue or expenditure, and you're going to see that throughout the presentation today that it sold about 6 days after our fiscal year ended, so it kind of messed some things up a little bit, but we'll talk through that. On the expenditure side, we actually did spend also considerably less than what we had budgeted. A lot of that's because of carryover. We didn't spend all the carryover that we had anticipated, and then with this compensation system passing, the referendum passing for that, we did reserve quite a bit of funds for the future for our compensation system. And then you can see other financing sources uses we were right on. So the net change in fund balance was anticipated to go down by $676,000. It actually went up by $446,000. So that's about $1 million swing. Again, most of it was anticipated, either related to the school construction house not selling quite like it was supposed to, or not spending all the money for the school for the compensation system. So here's the detail of the fund balance, kind of how everything breaks down, and this gives you a good story of things. The non-spendable is in 2016. This is end of year, so this is the June 30th, 2016 is the right column. June 30th, 2017 is the left column. The $95,000 is actually our land that we are buying the house, or that we built the house on last year. The $578,000 is land that we're building the house on this year in the Bergamot, plus the cost of the school construction house that we didn't sell yet last year. So that's why non-spendable is a little bit higher. If you ask me to have this statement done on July 8th, basically you'd only have the land left in there, that column. So it was over a $400,000 home. Restricted, that's our health. We have self-funded dental insurance, which just basically means we do hire a third-party administrator. They pay our claims, those types of things, but we basically pay into a fund, and then we try to anticipate how much we're going to spend on dental insurance. Our employee contributions go into there as well as the district's contribution, and we actually increased our fund balance by about $45,000 last year. We did have a small premium increase. We were starting to get real close to our prior year. Our revenues are equaling our expenditures, so the actuaries recommended a 2% increase. We did increase premiums by 2% last year. That was the first time since we went self-funded that we did that. But you can see that our revenues exceeded our expenditures, and so we were actually able to increase our fund balance. I would not anticipate another increase and we didn't increase dental insurance premiums this year. I wouldn't anticipate an increase for several years in the future as well. That kind of just will hold us there. Assigned, that's our carryover, what we typically have called carryover. You'll see that number increase fairly significantly. 680,000 of that was related to the compensation system. So if you take 680 or 700,000 away from that, you're pretty much at what you were at last year as far as the carryover. So the majority of their increase was related to was related to the compensation system. The unassigned went down a little bit, but if you had spent, or if you had received the funds for the construction house, you take that approximately $480,000 or so in the construction house, and you take that out of unspendable and you put it into unassigned. We're not that far actually from the $10,333,000 that we had last year. It is a small reduction in our unassigned values, but not much, a couple $100,000.
Andy, just to jump, we've got your fund balance chart showing where we are at for 16-17 that you're obligated to report to us.
Yep.
The percentages there would be without the house revenue, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Right. So I debated putting an asterisk there, but then I'm like, well, I didn't put an asterisk there in the previous years, so I thought I'd just explain it to you tonight. That's what's going on this slide is we're doing that calculation. So that's basically looking at what our percentage of fund balance is, and you can see that it did go down. I will mention that the 2017 number, the 51,758,000 number, 310, is a budget number. That is the 17-18 budget. So it's probably inflated a little bit with the carryover dollars and those types of things. We won't spend that whole amount, so that percentage will end up being a little bit higher than the 18.5% basically. Plus, if, as Mr. Zock said, had the school construction house sold, there would be another $400 and some thousand dollars, $450,000, $460,000 in there that would help increase that percentage a little bit. But it does show something, and that is that if we keep our fund balance the same, or even as last year we reduced it a little bit, the percentage is going to decrease as we continue to increase expenditures. So that is something to consider a little bit. And that may at some point in time become an issue when we're trying to cash flow borrow, or not have to cash flow borrow. We may have to if we don't increase that fund balance percentage kind of back up to that 20% range. Oh, I went a little fast. So here's just a real quick thing, and you guys have seen this before in the budget packets and stuff. This is just how we spent our funds. We're looking at general fund and debt service expenditures last year. The majority of our funds are on instruction. Support is kind of everything else. That can be anything from special education assistants, librarians, different types of people, that OTs, PTs, school psychs, guidance. All those different things are kind of in that support category, but the majority of funds are spent on instruction. The next slide kind of says where our revenues come from, and you'll see that the majority of the revenues, as we've talked about in the past, come from two main sources, state and then local being property taxes. And you can kind of see how those numbers bounce around a little bit, the two numbers on the top, the blue line and the purple line. And that's basically based on two numbers, how many students we have each year, if we're increasing, decreasing, what's going on that. For the most part, we've been increasing in the last several years, and then what our property values are doing too. Those are the two main components that determine what the breakout of state and local revenues is. So you can see that there was a little bit wider gap this year in 2017, and that's because our assessed values have been starting to increase, and as they increase, what happens is the state views us as more wealthy, and as we're viewed more wealthy, they reduce their aid, and property taxes make up the difference there. So this is a real simple one, kind of shows where we are in our debt versus our capacity to issue debt. You can see we're significantly less, not even close to where we are. That's fairly typical. We have lots of capacity to issue debt in the future if we have to, with growth and those types of things. So this is just a quick line graph to show you that. So that kind of ends the formal presentation. If there's questions, I'm happy to go through them. I will say that there's kind of like two fiscal statements in this bound copy that you have. There's the fiscal statement that's related to what bondholders likes to see, and that gets fairly complicated. We're talking about two different types of GASB rulings that were put into place this year related to pensions. not an expert on those things. The other set of financial statements in here are related to the Department of Public Instruction and how they view things. That I've got down pretty well, because that's kind of our what we live on a daily basis. So if there's questions, I'm happy to answer those.
Great. Courtney, any questions of Andy on the audit? Jeff? Dan?
Yes. Great job, again, unbelievable, almost. Makes me wonder, are we cheating on this somehow? Such a big system with no qualifications in the audit. I did have one question in the cover executive summary or whatever
Yep.
it might be. There's a reference to an appendix that I can't find, and that's on page 2 under corrected and uncorrected misstatements towards the bottom.
Uh-huh.
Right at the end of that paragraph, it says see appendix.
Okay.
I didn't find any appendix. Do you know what that is, or?
I
is there one?
don't. The only thing that I know, the adjusted journal entries, which you have here, but they weren't really, I'm wondering if that's a typo. I can double check that with them tomorrow.
Okay. It may be that they always have an appendix because there's always
Something.
something, but somehow with Oregon School District, there just isn't anything.
That is true. I will double check that and let you know, so Brian can
Okay.
share that with the in-betweener.
Other than that, I have nothing else. Great job.
Thanks.
Barb? Krista? Couple questions, and I want to walk through just a couple points. On page